Intelligence. It's one of the hardest things to quantify in human beings. Sure, you can see how strong somebody is based off how much they can bench or curl or just lift above their head, but intelligence is a non-tangible trait. Sure, you can have somebody take an IQ test, but some people aren't as good at tests as others, and intelligence can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. While somebody could be a practical genius with an IQ of over 200, they could have some of the least common sense out of any human being you've ever met in your entire life. While there's some people out there who would test below 100 in IQ who you wouldn't want to be without if, well, you know, society hit the fan. Intelligence, like anything that has to do with the brain whatsoever, is almost impossible to describe. However, that being said, some people definitely make questionable and probably wrong decisions. And with those people, we can pretty definitively look at them and go, dumb. Because at the end of the day, if there's one thing that should be used to quantify intelligence, it's you using your brain to make sure that you don't end up in hot water. And with the more often you end up in hot water, the less intelligent you probably are. Which is what makes Naruto as a series so interesting. Because all of the smartest characters in the show at some point or another seem to get themselves in some hot water that they can't seem to get themselves out of. And these are characters of legendary intelligence who, for hundreds of episodes we've been told, are so smart that they can figure anything out. And yet they'll make shoddy plans or continue to make the same mistake over and over again, and we as the viewers or the readers are left scratching our heads a little bit. The idea of me creating a video asking if one of the smartest people in the Naruto universe is dumb is not new. We've done it for Shisui, Itachi, Kakashi, Madara, a lot of people. And while I must say that I absolutely stand by any of the conclusions I made in any of those videos, and that a lot of those characters, especially Madara, are a lot dumber than we give them credit for, there is no character with a greater dichotomy between their hyped up intelligence and their on-screen intelligence than Orochimaru. Orochimaru in the Naruto universe is the king of making the wrong choice. Throughout the entirety of Naruto, Orochimaru constantly chooses the hardest possible route to his end goal, when there are easier and just as fulfilling or just as successful routes right next to him at all time. And yet, throughout the entire duration of Naruto's run, we're told that Orochimaru is this character of legendary intelligence, a man on a journey to discover every jutsu, every senjutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, everything. He is a man on the path to infinite knowledge. For all intents and purposes, he should be the smartest character in Naruto. And yet, there are multiple times throughout the story that Orochimaru's character doesn't line up with the story we've been told about it. Which is why today we're exploring the question, was Orochimaru dumb? Before we get to exploring anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you love the idea of me tearing down your favorite anime characters, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. Been doing a lot of JJK recently, but that's just because it's very popular right now. And if you just love the idea of me talking about anime characters, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Who Talk is Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But before we get into all that, guys, today we gotta talk about our favorite recurring sponsor to the page, Factor. Listen, as somebody who has been incredibly busy this summer, I'm trying to save as much time as possible not doing menial tasks. And unfortunately, one of those menial tasks that I just don't have time for right now is cooking. But here's the thing, we all know that health is very important to me. How else am I gonna cosplay all of my favorite anime characters without the appropriate washboard abs? But with Factor, I get the best of both worlds. Not only do I eat well, but I also save time. I get to skip the trip to the grocery store, the shopping, the cooking, the cleaning. I just throw a meal in the microwave and I'm eating probably better than I would be even if I cooked. Because Factor has fresh, never frozen meals that are ready in just 2 minutes. And therefore all you have to do is throw them in a microwave, hit 200, and you can go back to sucking in some vitamin D. And if you're trying to get that summer body going, Factor has got your back, as Factor has delicious, calorie-conscious, dietitian-approved meals that all clock in at under 550 calories. And let me tell you, without Factor in my life, I wouldn't be operating at the level I currently am. Producing 6 YouTube videos a week is tough, and it cuts into my schedule for pretty much everything. But the only thing more important to me than my YouTube upload schedule is my health. So without Factor saving me time and making sure I'm healthy, I probably wouldn't be uploading 6 times a week. But another thing that's incredibly important to me is taste. And I don't expect you guys to believe that factor meals are as incredible as I'm describing them to be just with me sitting down in this chair and telling you, so let's go on a little field trip. Today we're gonna be eating our ají amarillo pepper chicken. All we gotta do is remove this outer packaging, poke a couple of holes in this film, remove this cup, and put this bad boy in the microwave for 2 minutes. All I gotta do is press start and I got dinner on the way. Now you can't tell me that that doesn't look absolutely delicious. But let's have a bite. Oh my. That chicken is so tender. The couscous is cooked perfectly. The sauce is delicious. This might be one of the best things I've ever got from them. So what are you guys waiting for? Head to factor75.com or use the link below and enter code NCHammer2350 for 50% off your first order. That's factor75.com or follow the link in the description and enter code NCHammer2350 for 50% off your first order. It's time to save time and save your health. So Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin, a potential pick for the 4th Hokage of the Leaf, said to be one of the most intelligent characters in not only Konoha, but the entire world. The founder of the Sound Village, the man who was able to recreate wood release, the man who was able to create a genetically created Mangekyo Sharingan and shove it in Shin Uchiha's face, a man who was able to recreate the Karma Seal in the version of a curse mark that actually works technically in a better capacity than the Karma Mark at the Karma Mark's job. A borderline unkillable cockroach has been cut down a dozen times and never actually dies. A man who now currently technically inhabits an immortal body since he was able to take over a white Zetsu, which are made entirely out of Hashirama's cells. A man who turned the tides of the 4th Great Shinobi World War by bringing back the 4 previous Hokage with Edo Tensei, a jutsu he pulled from the ashes of Tobirama's coffin and mastered. How on God's green earth could I say that this man is anything but one of the most intelligent entities in Naruto? Well, he is. In actuality, I'm not questioning Orochimaru's intelligence. Like we said, intelligence is an incredibly difficult thing to quantify, and Orochimaru's intelligence feats are nothing to be scoffed at. Without him, Sasuke wouldn't have achieved the level of power that he was able to achieve in the early parts of Naruto, the 4th Great Shinobi World War wouldn't have been won, and Wood Release would have been lost to the annals of history. And yet, it's undeniable to say that Orochimaru doesn't make some questionable decisions. See, to understand Orochimaru's questionable decisions, we have to understand what Orochimaru's sole motivation in life is. See, Orochimaru wants to be an entity that's acquired all of the knowledge of the world. And while that knowledge does usually manifest itself in mastering all of the ninjutsu and genjutsu and taijutsu and senjutsu of the world, Orochimaru's quest for knowledge does technically go beyond that, as the application of jutsu can genuinely be applied to anything in the Naruto world. At the end of the day, Orochimaru wants to know everything. However, Orochimaru is just a human. At least for a long time, Orochimaru was just a human. And humans got a timer. Orochimaru figured out pretty early into his scientific career that just one lifetime wouldn't be enough to figure out all of the secrets of the world. And they're right about that. 70 to 100 years is not enough time to figure out all of the secrets of the world, especially when your world has things like jutsu. Then again, I guess our world has things like string theory and chemistry, and it's not like Orochimaru's trying to crack the code on those. But in order to overcome a standard lifespan, Orochimaru has looked into ways to make themselves immortal. And the method that they chose is an interesting one. See, Orochimaru has an ability known as living corpse reanimation that allows them to transfer their soul into other people's bodies. However, there's kind of an issue with this technique. It, just like a human life, also has a timer, in actually more ways than one. See, this is an incredibly stressful and hard to pull off jutsu, and therefore Orochimaru can only do this jutsu every 3 years, which you would say is probably fine, because if he switches to somebody else's body, he should be able to inhabit that body for 50 or 60 years, right? Assuming he gets the body at the prime age of 13, which seems to be the age he's interested in nabbing. However, the 3-year timeline is tied into this jutsu in more ways than just one. As with the average body that Orochimaru switches into, he can actually only stay in that body for about 3 years, as the body that he's taken over after 3 years begins to weaken and reject his soul. However, that may not be the case for everyone, and this is really what Orochimaru is interested in. See, Orochimaru believes that out there are things known as perfect vessels. Powerful young boys who are subservient to Orochimaru's will to the point that they would never reject his soul. And over the course of the anime and the manga, we've seen 2 different boys pop up as what Orochimaru believed to be perfect vessels, Kimimaru and Sasuke. And you'll notice a similarity between these two boys. Both of them wield a Kekkei Genkai, specifically a family lineage or a hidden jutsu Kekkei Genkai, something that hypothetically Orochimaru wouldn't be able to get his hands on and control without taking over somebody else's body. At least, that's definitely the case in Shikatsu Miyaku, the Kekkei Genkai wielded by Kimimaro, as without taking over Kimimaru's body, Orochimaru would never understand Shikatsu Miyaku or be able to use it, which is especially true considering the fact that Kimimaru is the last member of the Kaguya clan because they were wiped out when they tried to invade the Hidden Mist village. However, there's a problem with Kimimaru. His body is breaking down, so Orochimaru actually can't use him as a vessel, meaning essentially that Orochimaru will never get to fully understand what Shikatsu Miyaku is like. However, the Sharingan does not fall into that categorization, so you can't just implant Kimimaru's bones into your body and hope that you get Shikatsu Miyaku. It doesn't work like that. However, you know what you can do? Take a Sharingan out of somebody else's body and put it in yours. It's only been done a gajillion times. Twice by people who don't belong to the Uchiha clan, and all you need is to pop out an eye and place it in your eye socket and use a little bit, and I mean a little bit of medical ninjutsu, and then you got a Sharingan, meaning that Orochimaru is wildly, and I mean wildly overqualified for acquiring a Sharingan and popping it into his face. Truly, the wildest part about all of this is that we know for a fact that Orochimaru has access to hundreds of Sharingan. See, before the story of Naruto even began, Orochimaru stumbled across a little boy by the name of Shin. And what Orochimaru figured out about Shin is that Shin had skin that allowed for Shin to have any foreign object grafted onto his body completely fine. And thus, Shin was of great interest to Orochimaru and Danzo. And thus, when Danzo and Orochimaru started working together before Orochimaru was cast out of the village, Orochimaru decided to take Shin's arm and graft it onto Danzo, so that Danzo could now have an arm where he could graft any foreign material onto it without it being rejected. Well, actually, I lied. I'm sorry. This didn't happen until after Orochimaru's run out of the village, because we know that after Orochimaru's run out of the village, Yamato kind of stumbles out of his lab and is like, I have wood release, and Danzo's like, I want that. Is what we learned in filler, and it's up to you as to whether or not you want to fill out the information that we didn't have already with filler information or reject the filler in its entirety. But in that moment when Danzo and Yamato are training together in filler, Danzo's hand isn't bandaged yet, thus kind of confirming, because once again, filler, that Danzo doesn't get his Shin Uchiha arm until after Orochimaru leaves the village. But also that kind of makes sense, because why would Danzo need a Shin Uchiha arm if he didn't have a bunch of Sharingan he wanted to jam into it? And when do we know canonically that Danzo acquired a bunch of Sharingan? Well, that would be after the Uchiha Massacre. Because after the Uchiha Massacre, Danzo and a couple of his cronies waltzed into the Uchiha village and just started plucking eyes like they were blueberries. Meaning that at the time of transplanting a bunch of Sharingan into Danzo's arms, Orochimaru had access to a bunch of Sharingan. Not to mention that we know for a fact that Orochimaru started his human experimentations prior to the Uchiha Massacre. And for some reason, Orochimaru got obsessed with the idea of acquiring a body with the Sharingan after the Uchiha Massacre. Because we know that Orochimaru joins the Akatsuki to get after Itachi, which is wild because for years, while he was doing human experimentation in Konoha under everybody's nose, he could have just waltzed into the Uchiha village and taken whatever Uchiha he wanted. I mean, that's basically what Danzo had been doing. Or he could have plucked the eye out of a dead Uchiha on the battlefield of the Third Great Shinobi World War, which he was very much active in. But I know, I can hear you saying, but he wanted Itachi's Sharingan. And maybe he believed that Itachi was a perfect vessel, and that's why he was so obsessed with Itachi. And honestly, that's fair. And it's backed up even further by the point that in Boruto now, Orochimaru has the ability to create regular Sharingan and MSs. But one could also very easily make the argument that by the time that Boruto comes around, Orochimaru's already mastered everything there is to know about the Sharingan, even without ever inhabiting a body that had them. If you want to take it even one step further, Orochimaru was working very closely with Danzo at the time of the Uchiha Massacre. I mean, remember when Orochimaru was still in Konoha doing human experimentation, trying to recreate wood release, that was in collaboration with Danzo. And that's before the Uchiha Massacre, and then he gave Danzo Shin Uchiha's arms and put a bunch of Sharingan in there after the Uchiha Massacre. They've always been close. So if Orochimaru wanted the Sharingan so badly and was working closely with a person who had two of the strongest Sharingan users under his little puppet string, why wouldn't Orochimaru try to A, stop the Uchiha Massacre from happening in the first place, because that would eliminate an insane amount of test subjects down the line, or B, just have Danzo bring him a powerful Uchiha that he can transfer his consciousness into? to. Now one can make the argument that Danzo and Orochimaru weren't talking about their plans to kill all of the Uchihas, and honestly, I give you that. That one's pretty thin. But after the Uchiha massacre, that's where the real problems start for Orochimaru. See, we know during the Uchiha massacre that Orochimaru's already out of the village, and when Itachi goes to the Akatsuki to keep an eye on them for Konoha, Orochimaru pulls up and is like, me too. And then we find out that the only reason that Orochimaru joined the Akatsuki is so he could take Itachi's body, which was prime for grabbing now that he was no longer associated with Konoha. Honestly, I guess he figured it was a net positive, because it's not like Konoha was going to be upset that Orochimaru wiped out Itachi. That's just like two bads becoming one good. It goes really poorly for Orochimaru. See, in this moment, Orochimaru realizes that his immortality technique can actually be reversed by the power of the Sharingan. That is to say that if he tries to take over a wielder of the Sharingan, the wielder of the Sharingan can actually take his soul and control it, making Orochimaru the soul inside another body that would eventually weaken and decay and die. However, before Itachi can fully suppress Orochimaru's entire soul with the power of his Sharingan, Orochimaru breaks one of his fingers, snapping him out of the Genjutsu, and Orochimaru flees, leaving the Akatsuki. And you would think in that moment Orochimaru would learn a very valuable lesson about trying to take on somebody with a powerful Sharingan, but nope. Because Orochimaru tries the same thing about a decade later, but we're not there yet. See, what's worse about Orochimaru trying to take over Itachi's body, I mean, we can't hold that against him. He wanted the Sharingan, he tried to take it, he didn't know that his technique could be reversed through the power of a Sharingan, is that let's remind ourselves of what Orochimaru's grand plan in all of this is. Immortality. Orochimaru wants to live forever, or at least long enough to figure out all of the secrets of the world. And in the Akatsuki is an entire team known as the zombie duo, Hidan and Kakuzu, who are called the zombie duo because they're both effectively immortal. I say effectively immortal because Kakuzu can be killed. Hidan can't, except from lack of eating or drinking, or if he stops giving sacrifices to Lord Jashin, which I guess is like a lot of rules around immortality. So like Hidan can be killed. So while I do understand that Orochimaru wants to figure out the Sharingan, why wouldn't he try to take over the people with immortal bodies? Listen, I can hear you screaming through the screen.
Because after 3 years, their bodies would still reject Orochimaru.
And you're right, after 3 years, Hidan and Kakuzu's souls would probably reject Orochimaru's body. And thus, taking over somebody with immortality doesn't really do anything for Orochimaru. Unless, of course, it does. Let's remind ourselves of why Orochimaru wants to take over certain people's bodies. Because he wants to understand the Kekkei Genkai, or the abilities of said person. So, if, hypothetically, Orochimaru were to take over Hidan or Kakuzu's bodies, sure, he probably wouldn't be able to hold on to it forever, but in those 3 years, you bet your sweet ass that Orochimaru would probably figure out the key behind either getting Lord Jashin's blessing or Earth Grudge Fear. As you know what either of those things would grant Orochimaru, not having to switch every 3 years into a new body that has the chance of reversing that process onto you. And I know, once again, what you're saying.
Well, Orochimaru wouldn't want Hidan's body because Hidan can't use jutsu.
Maybe, but you know who very much can use jutsu and also has a kit that would be incredibly advantageous to Orochimaru's general curiosities about how other people's abilities work? Kakuzu. See, not only would Earth Grudge Fear grant Orochimaru a level of immortality, but Earth Grudge Fear also has the added bonus of being able to swap out organs with people you've killed. And thus, this is how Kakuzu is able to get such powerful elemental releases, because Kakuzu takes the vital organs of people that he's killed that were particularly skilled in certain jutsus. He then manifests these people's abilities in new masks. In essence, by taking somebody's vital organs, not only is Kakuzu extending his own life, but also mastering other people's jutsus. And it's not like Earth Grudge Fear is some genetic anomaly that popped up in Kakuzu. You could say the same about Jashinism. Both of these people wield abilities they learned, and Orochimaru served next to them. And you're telling me at no point in time was Orochimaru curious enough to ask about these levels of immortality these two have, to be like, hey, how do I pull off Earth Grudge Fear? Or, hey, how do I get Lord Jashin's blessing? He wouldn't even technically have to take over their bodies. He could just learn the hidden techniques that they learned. And then after you acquire immortality, if you want to figure out how a Sharingan works or feels, just steal one, just make one. The wildest bit is that Orochimaru absolutely kills enough people to either gain Lord Jashin's blessing or to gather hearts and livers and lungs from the people that he's killed with Earth Grudge Fear. Like, it's not like Orochimaru has a moral barrier he has to crawl over to use these forbidden jutsus. He killed 70 children trying to recreate wood release. If the subjects look like they're about to die, just draw a little circle, offer them up to Lord Jashin, and then you got immortality. Like, if you're already gonna be making all of this waste that is, you know, dead people from experiments, you might as well not only offer them up to maybe a god, but also get something out of it. Recycle. And what's wild is that we learned in Akatsuki Hiden, the Akatsuki light novel, that Hidan loves teaching people about Lord Jashin. Like, it's like his favorite thing to talk about. If Orochimaru had just gone up to him and like started a conversation at the water cooler in the Akatsuki hideout, he probably would have got the blessing. Assuming that Lord Jashin is actually a real entity that's able to give blessings, and Hidan wasn't just born with immortality and found a way to rationalize it by creating a fake godhead. Always got to cover yourself from your own theories. But what does Orochimaru do instead? He goes for Sasuke. Not only does he go for Sasuke, he plants a curse mark on Sasuke that makes Sasuke way more powerful. However, of course, he places the curse mark on Sasuke because he wants Sasuke to use the curse mark, and the more that Sasuke uses the curse mark, the more he is susceptible to believing what Orochimaru says and bending to his will, because that's how the curse mark works. The more you use it, the more you become subservient to Orochimaru because you're using his Senjutsu chakra. And Orochimaru wanted Sasuke to have this curse mark and use it so eventually it can be turned into a perfect vessel, because that's how Orochimaru makes the perfect vessel. At least that's what we believe. He never actually says the process of creating a perfect vessel. However, both Himaru and Sasuke's one similarity between the two of them is that they had a curse mark that they used a lot, and it's a possibility and probably not a bad theory to assume that the more subservient you become to Orochimaru through the usage of your curse mark, the easier you are to suppress as a soul, making you a perfect vessel, because a soul that was not only powerful but was also completely subservient to Orochimaru wouldn't try to reject him after 3 years. It also wouldn't decay after 3 years, making you a perfect vessel. But don't you find it funny that Orochimaru switched his narrative from just wanting Itachi for his Sharingan to now wanting Sasuke to not only be the perfect vessel, but also to get his Sharingan? Because here's the thing, Orochimaru couldn't figure out getting the Sharingan from Itachi because he was too powerful, and then ironically made Sasuke too powerful to take over his body. Because when Orochimaru is really down in the dumps about 3 years after battling against Hiruzen and is looking for Sasuke's body to transfer into, Sasuke kicks down the door and kills Orochimaru. However, in that moment, Orochimaru tries to transfer into Sasuke's body, but Sasuke uses the power of the Sharingan to reverse the narrative on Orochimaru again. And what's wild is that is straight up Orochimaru's fault. If Orochimaru in the Forest of Death had just decided to take over Sasuke's body, he would have got a Sharingan. Sasuke at that point was not strong enough to reject the will of Orochimaru. Now, technically, would that have made Sasuke just a throwaway vessel that would have decayed in 3 years? Yes, but considering the fact that Orochimaru had already learned the lesson that trying to take over a powerful Uchiha ends in Genjutsu, the fact that he made the only remaining Uchiha powerful enough to reverse the body switching technique on him with Genjutsu doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Unless, of course, you go with the narrative that Orochimaru believed that the power of the curse mark was at such a level that Sasuke was already completely subservient to him, which makes no sense when you consider the fact that Sasuke had a Chidori in his chest. But obviously, in that circumstance, Orochimaru had no other option. But like, Sasuke was absolutely a monster of his own creation. Take it even one step further than that, we gotta go a little bit backwards, back to the Forest of Death. Because here's the thing, Orochimaru understands that there's only 2 people left on Earth with Sharingan, Itachi and Sasuke, at least so far as Uchihas go. And he's already tried with Itachi and failed miserably to take over his body. And thus Orochimaru decides that the next Uchiha will be his perfect conduit. And so he marks Sasuke with a curse mark, which once again he did in order to make Sasuke into a perfect vessel. However, as we've all heard, the curse mark only gives you a 1 in 10 chance to survive, meaning that Orochimaru decided to take a gamble with the one Uchiha left on Earth that he had any chance of taking over to understand the Sharingan, and gave him a 10% chance at survival. Now, once again, people can say that Orochimaru probably wouldn't want Sasuke's body if he couldn't survive the curse mark transformation, and in that regard, you are correct. But once again, if Orochimaru had just taken over Sasuke's body in the Forest of Death, he would have understood the Sharingan. He would have got the information he was looking for. And if Orochimaru had taken any initiative in the Akatsuki and had figured out immortality in a less completely asinine way, he could have not only figured out the Sharingan through the medium of Sasuke, he could have figured out immortality through the mediums of Kakuzu or Hidan and gotten all of the information and all of the immortality he could have ever wanted. But the fact that he tried to double dip on Sasuke after not learning his lesson with Itachi destroyed his plan. Now, obviously, Orochimaru, just like Madara, had everything work out for him in the end because he was able to switch over to a white Zetsu, which doesn't have a soul and is technically immortal, which means that Orochimaru now has his perfect vessel and is clearly at a level of understanding with the Sharingan that he's now able to create them. But it is relatively undeniable that there's some moments in Naruto from Orochimaru that really make you wonder about his intelligence. What do you guys think? Do you think Orochimaru was dumb or maybe just trying to do too much? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. See, the beauty of making a video like this with a character that people don't love as much as Itachi is that I'm probably not going to get called a pedo by Seth the Programmer for having stickers on my water bottle, but then again, some people love to project.